Welcome back into the State of the Game podcast, episode 4. I'm William Galloway, off camera here, running the ones and twos. We have Coach Chris Yeager. We have Coach Jerry Hood. Jeff Allison is with us from Alabama, formerly 6A, 7A football, but now we've reclassified. And Jeff, good to have you in studio.
Thank you, William. I told everybody that Alabama 7A football, I got fired when they got out of business, so I got to reinvent myself here.
And we've got Coach Jerry Hood. Jerry, good to see you.
Man, thanks for having us again. What an incredible day we have. We're happy to have Jeff with us. And, coming up, Coach L will be here. So we'll answer a lot of questions today, but a lot to talk about, don't you think?
It's going to be great. Good to be here with you guys.
All right, so today's topic is reclassification, and I'll start with you, Coach Yeager. To all our listeners and everybody tuning in for Coach L, that's coming up in just a few minutes. We're super excited to share that conversation with you. We'll break that down afterwards, but before we want to talk about reclassification, no more 7A. Coach Yeager, you and your Mountain Brook Spartans competed in 7A for a long time. Now in 5A. Coach Jerry Hood, you and your Leeds Green Wave in 4A. So, guys, just open up the table for conversation here. What is your initial reaction to last week's AHSAA public-private split and the elimination of 7A?
Well, we fought very, very hard to keep the private schools, with the public schools. We formed a coalition of coaches basically to address it. And the reason we did that, we were at a point where we felt like the coaches we're not having a voice. There was a lot of conversation going on among the politicians. There was a lot going on among administrators. And so when these groups were getting together, whether it was with the politicians or the central board and people representing the private schools, number one, the public schools didn't have a voice in it, and then the coaches didn't. So we fought very, very hard. The thing that we had, the proposal that we made weeks ago was, let's keep everything together. Let's collect information in Dragonfly to see if there is an issue with an unlevel playing field, and as a result of just basically the private schools, or is it across the board? If it was with private schools, leave as is. If it's not, let's make it a level playing field across the board. But the issue to me was I'm really, really sad that we've been together. We were unique. We were one of the only ones in the United States where the public schools and the private schools play together. And so we did not want to see that happen. So I really hate that happened. But at the same time, this really got kicked into overdrive because of the Choose Act. And then what happened is a result of what was going on with the Alabama High School Athletic Association and the legislation about the debate over, does tuition count as financial aid or not between the association and the politicians. Well, then all of a sudden, competitive balance and a lot of other issues that we had been talking about before that. Yeah, so I felt like that the Choose Act sort of hijacked what was most important within our association, because I think removing the private schools, it does not solve the problem. But at the same time, I'm going to say this. I don't know that Heath Harmon had any choice but to do what he did to preserve the sovereignty of the association. Now, that's my perception of it, because the one thing he said was in his press conference is that the financial piece is no longer in debate. The competitive balance is no longer in debate. The multiplier no longer in debate. The private schools now, they're forming a championship committee with private schools. Everything that the private school asked for, they got, except they're no longer with us in championship play, which makes it much more difficult. So that's my take on it. What about you guys?
Well, the first thing I thought was, I wish I knew what led to that decision, because we don't know. We don't know what the conversations were.
True.
We hear about the complaints from private schools. We know some of the issues publicly from a public school perspective. That I think you're right. The Choose Act coming in, then a couple of other bills to let them play and all this kind of thing kind of push back what we thought was a big issue. And what we thought was a big issue had nothing to do with private schools. Nothing. And if you look at the number of private schools, especially if you take time to talk to private school coaches and administrators, a lot of them are like, this is insane, the amount of travel, the amount of money we're going to have to spend now on this. And for a select few, there's plenty of money in a private school. But for the majority, it's like, how can we meet payroll? Can we afford another teacher? Now we got this added cost. And take away football. Football almost would support itself, but just think about if you take a girls basketball team, or you take the track team, and you got to travel 3 or 4 hours away. I mean, you getting into some money that you didn't have to deal with before. So I think overall, I'm sad about it, but I would love to even invite maybe a Central Border Control member, or Heath Harmon himself, or someone to come and say, make it make sense to us.
Yeah.
And then we may understand there was a rational reason, and how can we now go forward or move it in a better direction. But I'll be honest with you, it's been the hardest year to have to schedule. Once the regions came out, everything kind of changed, and I have had a booger bear of a time scheduled. At the taping of this broadcast, I'm still hunting, and so it's just made everything unique. What would be your perspective from you are associated with us through the media side of it, and what is your impression knowing private schools and public schools, and you've been around the coaches for many, many years. What do you think about the split?
I think it's going to be, like you said, I think it's easy maybe for the Briarwoods, the McGill-Tulans, the schools like that, the bigger top of the line schools, but the smaller ones, I always thought here recently the small schools got into the Alabama High School Athletic Association is because they wanted to get in like 1A and 2A to help be in a classification where they could, travel a lot easier and things like that. And so being here in Birmingham, I don't think we see that what their struggles are going to be. And now being separate, they're going to have to travel hours to get to play other teams, like you said, Jerry. I just think it's going to be hard for them to do that. And like I said, we don't see it here in Birmingham because of the Briarwoods and John Carroll's, things like that. But, I think everybody on the private school side is going to have to travel. And I just can't imagine these other sports, golf, tennis, and what they're going to have to do to make games.
I can speak to this. The private school coaches that I've spoken with, they are absolutely, trying to do the best they can because that was the charge they were given. But they are a little dismayed. And there's some long rivalries that will no longer happen.
Yeah.
That made Alabama sports great, high school sports great. It's sad. It's sad, but I wish I understood it more. I was hoping that Thursday, tomorrow, we would hear some of this at the Alabama Football Coach Association convention in Montgomery. But it looks like, as far as I'm hearing, that the AHSAA may not even be represented. Guess they have some things on their plate.
Yeah, the thing that I think would be helpful, I think it would be helpful if we had some sort of timeline as far as what occurred. I guess it was back in December. We had the football committee meeting. We've discussed that here. And we got, I'll be honest with you, it was helpful to me to hear from Mr. Harmon's mouth a little bit of the timeline and how all this started. Yeah. There was a couple of things, that I think triggered this thing, becoming, I'm not going to say hysteria, but this thing, man, was pushed in a very short amount of time from something we didn't think was an issue to something that, well, here we are, our entire association has changed. But, one of the things was there was a transition between, we had the changing of the guard as far as the executive directors. This conversation started, the CHUSAC started, with our previous executive director. He comes in, and some of those conversations had already occurred, according to what he told us at the football committee meeting. Those conversations were passed on. We don't think it's an issue. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, when it comes out, wait a minute, the wording's a little bit different. There is an issue. Now, that's what we, and people can say that's not right. I don't want to hear that or whatever. But that's what we were told is all I can say.
Right.
But then the thing that blows my mind, and I'm just still trying to wrap my brain around this, is how in the world did the rest of all the other things get thrown into this when that happened, and then all of a sudden it was just this laundry list of things that the private schools had issues with, which, you know what, I'm not saying that was not something that needed to be addressed, but what I am saying is it seemed like there was two different things.
Seemed like there was an opening.
Yeah, like in one, if you look at it one way, the Choose Act, we had this political part of it. We had the politicians in that, and then on the other side, we're sitting there as coaches, and we're going. Now all of a sudden we've got competitive balance. We've got mobility between classes for the private schools. How can I move back down? We've got the multiplier. All this laundry list got added onto it, and the noise. I don't know how you sort that out, but I don't know how we got to that point either. It happened so quickly.
I think one of the things is the whole reason we're having this kind of podcast is because nobody talks. Nobody. Mm-mm. The leadership doesn't talk to the members. The members complain within each other, and nobody calls up to the top and say, if this is indeed our organization, then you should answer a question. Now, Mr. Harmon took over a mess, a train wreck of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. It was unbelievable, and so God bless him. He has walked into a hornet's nest. I think he has great courage, and the reason I say I'd like to know more is because my impression of him is he's an honorable person, and he's not afraid to walk into the lion's den. He met with the private schools. He's been in front of us and said what he said and did what he said he would do as far as we know. Mm-hmm. And so I commend him for that. But my gracious, he walked into a real hornet's nest.
Well, one thing I think, too, is all right, so what would prevent him from getting on a podcast like this and just having a conversation? Well, I think that's a great question, except for this. Once you do that and the politics are involved in it, now every word you say can be, and so we sat there and say, well, why are we not hearing from him? Yeah. Well, that's why we're not hearing from him, because politics have entered into this. Yeah. If it was just our association that had total control, I think we'd be having a different atmosphere altogether as far as the conversation.
Plus, the media would be wearing him out.
Yeah, I'd say.
100%.
I don't think he could come on something like this or even do interviews. Wouldn't be smart. But he has a weekly newsletter. A general explanation to the members of that in that newsletter would be something, or just a communication would be like. Even leaving out the underlying details, this is what led to this decision, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because we can only speculate.
Because we just wonder.
Yeah.
How big was the multiplier in the competitive balance, you think, in private schools a factor?
I think both of them, there was an ending point when it was just 1.35, and coaches explained how the 3.5 came about. When it was 1.35, kind of okay. And then when you go 1.35 and competitive balance. So let's get out of football for a second. Let's look at volleyball. Now you got schools that are 2A in football and maybe 6 or 7A in volleyball. Okay, well, the things that my private school friends tell me is it's not that we had to go there. It's that once you're there, to get back to where you need to be, like once the athletes that were so great left, now we can't get back down. So I think the two together would be one thing. But I do think this too. We're trying to have conversations. We don't hate anybody. But if you push and push and push and push and push, and I'm not saying this happened, but if you push and push and push and push, Mr. Harmon has to do what's best for that organization, number one. And, the way the thing merged was a whole different issue back in the day. It was a black-white issue. Now you have the merger. Now private schools come in. And so this association, one, is court ordered, and secondly, you have to do what you have to do as a director to protect the organization.
Yeah.
That's your job.
Yep.
So how does reclassification, now that we have 6 classifications, public schools are over here, private schools over here, in your profession, in the media, how have you heard from your constituents and of how they feel about this, and how does that affect what you do?
Well, I was telling people on social media, because we lost 7A, that I'm sort of out of business on that part, that now we have 6
We just
on
call
down.
you A.
That's it.
Use
Just A. But, I think on, covering schools, it's just, the state sort of gave us these classifications, and so we just go with it.
Yeah, right.
So we're at their mercy, that we're going with it. My big thing over the years is when they started the 7A, they had 32 teams. Why didn't they decide 6A having 32 teams? Why do they just have the 7A? Because to me, on fairness, I would think if you're Mountain Brook in your school number, 45 or 50, I'm just saying you were higher in 6A, but how does they compete against the top schools in 6A? Why don't we have a 32 break for 6A? And why didn't we have maybe a 32 break in 5A? And maybe we just had a north-south 6A or whatever on champion. I'm talking championship.
Sure,
We would you could still play whoever you wanted to.
Yeah.
But I was looking at it as championship. Why didn't they break that out in 32? Why just a 7A in 32?
The one thing, I know you guys saw the model, the 32 in 7A, the 32 in 1A kind of thing. That thing came out. But I will say this, and it goes back to what Jerry said earlier, Jeff, is that I don't know why when you sit there and you think, okay, 6 classifications, and now on the surface it looks like scheduling was going to be easier. I think if you went 32-32, I think scheduling would even get harder. There's something about the perception of a person. You go, okay, look, we're only 200 students difference. We're 100 boys difference. But that classification cutoff, for some reason, it freaks people out, and they say, "Oh man, I'm going to go play a 5A school, or I'm going to go play a 6A school." And
well, that's why my thought was maybe you just have a 6A North, a 6A South, but you would still have travel would be a little bit easier.
I see.
And things like that. So I'm just saying, why did the state box 7A in and not give you guys a break also on the championship levels at 5 and 6A?
Well, I think, what it ended up with the reclassification this time is, and I'm glad they did it for this reason. We don't have to find 4 non-region games, but it was 64 and 8 regions.
Right.
You got 8 teams. We're making it simple. Where it falls, okay? Because if I complain about my place and the number of kids I have competing against the top attended 5A school, if I complain about that, well, the 10 or 12 that have less than me, they're going to complain about that. Well, if you take the 10 or 12 less than me and put them in 3A, and now I'm the bottom, I'm complaining. That is a never-ending, where do the breaks need to happen, the competitive nature. So what they did was look at what is the average of all those, and they're all lined up pretty much where the top and the bottom are similar in nature. Now, it looks worse in 6A because the top 2 or 3 schools, Auburn, Hoover, I think, the top 2 or 3 schools have many, many more kids than Thompson maybe than the bottom of 6A for sure.
Right.
But if you get that all together, it kind of medians out a little bit.
But my thing was, if you're 59th out of 64, can you compete every year against the number 2 or 3 team in 6A?
Yeah.
If you're 59th in 5A, can you compete against the top 5 in 5A?
Well, we tie that back into what we were originally concerned about in this state. Is the number one problem was clusters of transfers going somewhere, you ask that, can you compete? Well, your job is to compete. So you shut up and you go about your job. But is it an advantage for a much bigger school population-wise to play a much smaller school population-wise? Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great question, though.
It is a really good question. So what are you going to do now? What's your plan?
Well, I'll cover 6 and 5A.
Alabama 6A.
Yeah, I mean, I still have my website, alabama6afootball.com, where it goes. I added 7A, 8 years ago or whenever it started.
Right.
So, I mean, it's still. I tell people if Jerry Hood has football players and wants to tag me for their workout films or their highlight films, I'm always going to retag them. Retweet them,
right.
Whatever I can do to help players in the state of Alabama. I'm like Coach L. I just want to help people. About 2 years ago, I had a kid from McAdory. He DM'd me and said, "Hey, thank you for retweeting all my highlights." He goes, "No coach knew anything about me until you got retweeted my stuff."
That's cool.
And I was like, "Wow,"
That's awesome.
and that's again. That's what I'm after. I'm after the kids that might not have the 5th star, the 4 star. And this guy was like a 3-star, but he got a Division I scholarship out of it. And that's what I like to do. And when I write game story, like no one writes stories anymore about your left guard. I remember you had a lineman that hurt his knee. Season done. I came in your office, took a picture of him. That was one of my top things that. Here he is watching through your window in your office.
Oh, yeah.
And, everybody loved that on Twitter because, again, this is a kid that, his career was done.
But he was helping coach.
Yeah. And it's stories like that I like to put out there on social media.
You've been in a long time.
Well, and Jeff, I want to ask you this too, just because Coach L talked about this as we continue to tease our conversation with him. He was saying that social media is something that coaches have to come to embrace. And no one has seen more change and embrace. We talk about, AHSAA going to 7A 8, 10, 12 years ago. You have seen the involvement, and you just shared that testimony of that young man who had his film shared and recruited. So talk about the way that has evolved and shaped not only programs but recruiting, and then also the way that high school football is covered, because as Coach Yeager and Coach Hood know, high school football is the front porch to many high schools as well as school systems all across our state.
Well, I think it started for me really back in COVID hit. All these college recruiters were not on the road. And so I noticed on my feed, all these college coaches. I mean, I got all these recruiting guys now watching Alabama 6A football and 7A football because they weren't getting out, or they have a small budget, just like the Division I school that found the kid at McAdory. And so they get on the feed and start seeing these kids and their highlights and stuff like that. And it starts conversations with them. Yeah. And that part has been great. The big thing about social media that I have a problem with is just the noise out there. I'm here to support you guys. That's the way I look at it. If you have a kid that needs attention, that's what I want to do. Do I want to come on a Friday night and criticize, Coach Hood, if you would have just called a better play on here or whatever, or if I'm going to criticize anybody, I'm going to criticize me of not doing enough. I'm not going to go and criticize a coach because that's just what I'm here to support. And I know, like I said, God's put me like Coach L, I'm on a mission to help people. And that's what I want to do, help players, help coaches, help communities together. And that's the stories I write before the game. The game I cover, I'll talk about the left guard. I'll talk about the right tackle. I'll talk about kids that, no one sees about because I want them to get some recognition.
I've seen many of those over the years, especially when I was at Clay. You would post something and it's a lost art a little bit to find a well-written article. Everything is clickbait now, short little nuggets, but a well-written, in-depth article And those are on your website.
Yep.
People can go there and look.
Still,
You're a talented writer, and your heart for kids is just awesome. And so I surely hope that we all in the state of Alabama, football-wise, will give you enough to write about this year.
I hope so. I think there's enough out there to always – but like I said, even during this transition with all the stuff that's happened in the state, I really got to be careful what I say because, again, I want to bring change if you guys want to change, but I don't want to come out and criticize things.
No, right.
That's not my place.
And I hope we're not coming off as being critical.
No.
We are just trying to understand and giving the benefit of the doubt to everyone, state level, human being level.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think maybe today we'll understand a little more than we did yesterday.
We're in a time now where, if you say the wrong thing or you offend the wrong person, we're in a time now, whoever thought that you'd be canceled, whatever that means, Well, me and Jerry, we don't care if we get canceled, but we understand people that come on that
Right.
do
Not
under,
care.
you can't afford
Right.
to be canceled. But at the same time, the great need of the hour is for people that, in things like you're talking about helping people, that they do speak, especially if it's to help somebody.
A good point of that is what happened to you on that interview.
Yeah.
We've been on this show documented. That's why I like doing it in this long form. You can watch every word we say, and if we misspeak, we better own it.
Yeah.
But they cut a 30-second sportscast on you, and the topic seems to be reclassification, and you're just asked a simple question about how do you like your region.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that's interpreted that you like that private schools are out.
Yeah.
And then our phones start blowing up on a very cold Saturday morning. And I'm like, I've never heard him say that. I've been with him a little bit. And he always says we're better together. There's got to be a solution, this and that. And he always looks at it from both perspectives. And that went all the way into the nighttime.
Yeah.
So whoever sent it to the guy that called us, he finally got the deal, sent it to us, and I was like, Lord have mercy. How did we get in there? I was supposed to have a quiet Saturday, Yeah. So I love the long form.
Yeah. No doubt.
All right, on that note, we want everybody who's tuned in, they want to watch the interview with Coach L. That's coming up here in just a second, so we're going to kick it over to that, and afterwards we'll have a little wrap-up here with Jerry, Chris, and Jeff, and here is Coach L. Without further ado, we want to thank him for his time, and now you can enjoy a conversation with Jerry and Chris and Coach L. Here we go. Coach L is in studio. Coach L is known all around, not just the Birmingham community, but the state of Alabama and the Southeast. Coach L, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me.
And Coach Yeager, we'll get it over to you to get things started. Welcome back in.
Awesome. Coach L, such a great honor to have you here with us today. We have really looked forward to this. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit better. And one thing, too, is for us just to ask some questions that people have asked us and let you address those as we move forward.
Most definitely.
First place I want to start is, to me, you've got a significant athletic story. Okay, so you go to Hueytown. Mm-hmm. Y'all are 0-24.
0-24 going into my 9th grade year.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. You guys played Pinson Valley in a spring game to snap that loss streak, right? And it was like you guys had won the Super Bowl. You're rocking the bus, and you're just going crazy. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. I'm going to fast forward to the year 2007. You guys you're in your season. You're 10-1. Okay, you win the first round of the playoffs, and you're playing Hoover. And it's back and forth. They score to go ahead, and then they kick off to you guys. And y'all got a player that runs a kickoff all the way back for a touchdown, a kickoff return for a touchdown.
Yeah, about 97 yards.
Who was that?
It was me.
That was you.
It was me. My kids don't believe it, but it was me.
Okay, all right. So then the game, it's 35-37. You guys, okay, so then you run jumbo right, 38 down to the house. Who was that?
I think it was me again.
That was you. Okay. All right. You line up, you score. It's 44-42. Y'all line up at the end of the game for a field goal. Deion Lacey?
We get ready to kick the field goal with Leon Fonseca.
Okay, I got
Leon
the name
Fonseca.
wrong. But anyway, he'd been almost perfect. Wasn't he perfect?
He was perfect the whole season. It was 13 degrees, probably lower, and it was his first kick of the night outside of an extra point.
And it went about 4 inches to the left upright.
Yeah, it did. It literally fell short about 6 inches of the goalpost.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so I knew it was close. There's a lot of that I can remember. I mean, a lot about that your year that I remember. I remember that game.
It's a monumental game for us at Hueytown. I think at the end of the day, you had a lot of gritty guys. A lot of those guys grew up with each other since middle school.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with them. I grew up on another side of town, and my parents had built our first ever home we ever had that my mom and my stepdad ever purchased. And it was just great for me to be able to kind of see camaraderie of what it looks like for guys to actually grow up together and build chemistry together. So for the city of Hueytown, it was probably one of the biggest games outside of them playing in the state championship a few years back.
That's incredible. Well, I want to ask you a question. So you're going to Hueytown, okay? Mm-hmm. They've got a 24-game losing streak. They hire a coach that had only coached for 5 years at AHSAA High School, Jeff Smith, an unproven coach. And all this adversity, you could have transferred.
Yeah. But,
you stayed there and basically turned the program around. And they're still, to this day, enjoying your legacy. They've been successful since then. I mean, that program, y'all brought that program and built that program out of the ashes. I mean, they just rose from nothing. And it was just because a lot of you guys believed in one another, believed in yourself. And I'm going to be real honest with you. A lot of people say, that Coach L, he's sort of and this is one thing that the reason that we're talking here is because Jeff Allison said, hey, why don't you talk to Coach L? He's got a reputation being the broker of talent throughout the city, the transfer puppet master. But I'm sitting here talking to a guy that your whole background, what you learned and stuff, was from staying. You could have transferred to Hoover. You could have been on that other team, and your name would have been among probably a few hundred other guys. But, man, you've got a legacy at Hueytown because you stayed and you fought through it. So let me ask you this. What did you learn from staying in a situation that from the outside looking in appeared to be hopeless? I mean, what did you learn from that?
I think in today's society, kids don't go through enough adversity. And I tell kids each and every day, I said, if you can't suffer for an hour and 30 minutes in a workout with me, then you're going to suffer in life. A lot of our kids don't have daily adversities. I had adversities coming up. Dad, my biological father wasn't inside of the household. My stepfather came around in middle school and did a great job at helping. But at the same time, that's a learning curve in its own. You know what I'm saying? My stepdad wanted to figure out what's off limits, what's not. You know what I'm saying? The different things that I had to go through having a young mom that had me as a teenager. I was raised off of adversity. So I understood, especially in my faith, that I would thrive in moments of pressure. Going in, I didn't know Hueytown was 0-24. Just being honest, growing up in the Forestdale area, I've never really heard of Hueytown. We've heard of Minor High School and Jackson Olin High School. And Jackson Olin at that time wasn't good since David Palmer. You know what I'm saying? But my stepdad went to Jackson Olin. It's just with him being an educator, he was like, hey, we're getting ready to build this brand new house, and it's not about you being comfortable, it's about you being uncomfortable, because one day as a man, you're going to have to thrive being uncomfortable. So shout out to my old coach, Jeff Smith. He just got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
He's the one that told me about those stories. We talked. I love Jeff Smith.
Yeah, that's my guy.
We go back to when he was a player at Jack State and I was a coach at Troy. We go a long way back, so love Jeff.
Yeah, that's my guy, and Miss Lisa, his family. And what I learned about staying, like I said, I saw a close group. Throughout my life, I've always had to move around every 2 years. We didn't have it, the best of the best. So we had to always move around every 2 years, and I never had a stable spot. Hueytown was the most stable spot that I've ever had in my life until I became an adult. And just being there, being around guys, and it's crazy because I get associated so much with that 07 game against Hoover that most of those guys think I graduated that year not knowing that I came back to lose to Hoover my senior year on that same field, the same way I did as a junior. But what I learned was it's something special about being able to go back to Hueytown at 35 years old, and that community still loves you. I could have Rush Probst actually walked across the field and was like, hey, man, you're a great player. He was like, we'd love to see you in this uniform next year. And honestly, me as a competitor, I said, I don't want to play with you. I want to beat you. And it probably wasn't a smart thing to say as an athlete to an adult, but that's the competitor in me walking across the field to lose a football game. I wasn't about joining a super team or, do anything like that. If I can go beat a team like this with the brothers that were 0-24 when I first moved in, if they've entrusted in me, if they've built trust in me to be a part of what they have in their legacy, why not? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a lost art this day and age. And I think it's pressures that come from spaces that if you've never been in them, you wouldn't understand. So I think that's why I was able to stay. That's what's important for me, a legacy. The new head coach just got hired at Hughtown. The principal called me and wanted me to meet him. And the first thing I said to him was, I said, sir, I don't know you. I said, but I'm a Golden Gopher. And I said, as long as I'm a Golden Gopher, I'm going to support whatever you guys are trying to build here, as long as it's, it fits what I stand for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yep.
So today we see kids moving because they say, okay, I'm in a failed program, which really a failed program really means they're not winning right now. When I think back, I think, what would Hughtown have been had you not been there? I mean, you were a key piece to that, not just in what you contribute athletically, but also your leadership. Today, advising kids, they're so, like when and parents too, because they're involved in a lot of those decisions. Are there things that you can learn from staying and going through adversity and you be the change agent? Is that something that you would advise today?
So just being honest, I'm the adversity in their lives. You know what I'm saying? I've built trust with athletes from, back. COVID year was the big year for step-by-step sports training. A lot of athletes were stuck at home. I was an essential worker working at Coca-Cola at the time, so I was able to travel and move around the roads. And when I got off work, we had a group of nurses that literally we had about 7,000 square feet. So we would bring in 5 athletes at a time and have them spaced out around the gym. And I was training Jefferson County Sheriff members who had just, when Sheriff Petway just got in office, he was like, hey, I need somewhere for my deputies to train because we need more deputies on the street. So I was training deputies and I was training athletes. And what we built through that time was a lot of relationships got close because they had nowhere else to go. Nobody knew me, and I didn't have anything. A guy that Coach Hood coached that speaks very highly of him, DJ Dale, went on to play 4 years at Alabama. Coach Saban sent him home with watches and things to track their workouts. But this is a guy that doesn't know me. I have 5 red bags, and I have about $200 worth of speed equipment. And this kid trusted me when I had nothing. Adversity. Kid trusted me when I had nothing and went on to thrive in his career at Alabama. So those moments and Michael Lockhart's and you look at a Kool-Aid McKinstry, you look at these different guys that came through that space, Cameron Silman Craig, these were guys who nobody knew about. Or, Kool-Aid had a name, but nobody really knew about it, what they were going to do off of the hype coming out of high school. But going into their college careers and thriving how they did, they trusted me when I had nothing. That's adversity. I didn't have the flashing lights. I didn't have air conditioning. I didn't have heat. I had kerosene blowers that were blowing heat into the back. And these are kids that are going to still continue to thrive. DJ Dale is married now. I was the first person he called and showed the ring and said, hey, Coach, I'm about to get married. And the first thing I thought to myself was, you're going to be a great husband because of the adversity that you went through up under Jerry Hood, up under Coach Coleman, up under the things that we went through. Those are the things that I'm adding each and every day while we're inside of the facility. Yeah, we got bright lights. Yeah, we've been able to partner with A41 training facility and their founders to be able to bring a space like that to the Titusville community and have kids see the bright shining lights that if I was growing up in Forgedale, when you take me to Alabama, I'm drawn to the lights and not drawn to the purpose of why I'm here at school. A lot of athletes are so focused on the NIL or I don't even think they're focused on winning anymore. That's my issue. Like, we play football to win games. We play football. We go through adversity to win at life. And a lot of times they're chasing opportunities, not understanding that. When I worked at Coca-Cola for 9 years, after my first year, I went through adversity of seeing guys that I felt like I trained and they got moved up before me, not understanding that God has a purpose for all of us. And if it wasn't my time to move, I went to Cisco for 8 months to work for the grocery company. I was making more money, but I was never at home for my young son and my young wife and our young part of our marriage. And I almost lost my family. And what I had to realize to myself, that opportunity that I was chasing wasn't as important as it was for the place that God said I needed to be. And I went back to that company. And when I went back to that company, I stayed. And staying taught me marketing, taught me leadership, taught me what it was to be a CEO, things that in my life I didn't experience other than through staying. You know what I'm saying? So many points in my life I realized where you got to be placed in proper soil for you to actually grow, and moving around and being in different pots doesn't allow you to actually grow in a way that helps you become a great man one day, a great coach one day, a great leader one day. So I'm adding different adversity and different things from a leadership standpoint on Leadership Summit, on ACT prep and tutoring, helping build athletes outside of football. You know, so that's what I'm doing on a day in and day out basis. But even on top of what I'm doing, I can't control the decisions of parents who are sometimes in a hole and they're chasing opportunities to pull their kids out of a hole and kids to pull their parents out of a hole. That's pressure that I hope I never place onto my kids' shoulders.
Yeah. You're talking about the kids that you coach. So let me ask you this. Do you ever share your story with players about, look, you know, like let's say a player comes in and he says, you know, that in his perception, he's at a school and in his perception, they haven't been very successful. Could you advise a player, one of your players, exactly what you said about your story? I mean, would you be able to advise them the same way and say, you know, like this is my experience?
So I'm gonna be honest. Early on, I didn't, and the only reason I didn't is because I saw what was going on, and I didn't want to be a guy guilty of kids moving around. So I would stay quiet and I'll just say, hey, it's you guys' decision. And I think the unique spot that I sit in that kind of got I guess we'll say a bad rep from the outside, not necessarily from the inside, was I didn't speak up in those moments when I could have because I didn't want to be guilty, making me guilty. You know, if God has given me a voice in these kids' lives to be able to share my story and use my testimony to help them, I was afraid, and I was like, hey, I'm misstewarding the position that I have and not really understanding the power of the influence I had in their lives. So now that's why it's great for me to be here now to be able to kind of speak up and say, hey, over the last 2 years when I've seen this madness as well, I've been able to be a guy to say, hey, this is the power in staying. Yeah. This is the power into not moving around.
Okay, so you see some of the things that are happening now, like in high school football. And there's a group of people that would like for high school football to go in the way of what college football is. And to me, you know, college football right now, in a lot of ways, and I think, you know, when recruiters come through, they'll be the first to tell you it's broken, you know. And is high school football, Coach L, is it worth saving? Is what you know in what high school football meant to you, is it something for all of us to work together, is it worth saving?
I think it's worth saving because the things that we learned when we were in high school. Friday Night Lights, if you talk to any athlete that's went on to play in college, that's went on to play at a professional level, they will tell you it's nothing like playing on Friday Night Lights. I agree. The things that I learned from Coach Smith, the things that I learned from Coach Russell, those things that I learned are things that I carry with me forever. Yeah. That makes me a great dad. The 6 o'clock a.m. workouts helped me get up at 5 o'clock in the morning at Jacksonville State. Those were things that I learned at an early age when I was still able to learn. A lot of time these athletes, when you get them in their 18 and 19 years old, it's hard to reprogram a learned behavior. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's worth saving because it's something special. I think that once we get some different rules and regulations in place to kind of stop it at the top, then we'll be fine. But I think it's something that didn't start in high school. It started more at the college level. Yeah, and as we get a hold on the college level at the top, then I think we'll be able to get a hold on it at a level at high school.
So what do you see the greatest threat is to high school? Because there's a lot of consensus on what the threat is, but just from your point of view, what's the greatest threat right now to high school football that you see? I
think the greatest threat for me right now is so many opportunities that don't have enough education around it. I think when you properly educate athletes and parents, because I think, and I said that backwards, when you properly educate parents and then the athletes, now, because if I teach a kid now, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. If you do X, Y, and Z this way, it will be better for you in the long run. If I go in with more information on financial literacy and I talk to a parent that may not be as educated in that field, the first thing that happens to the athlete, they're kind of shunned or told to be quiet. Now you're taking an athlete who's trying to do things the right way and literally take it step by step the right way. to his parent is like, hey, I know more than you. I can't listen to it.
Yeah.
So I think once we put more education in place and help these athletes and these parents understand this is the grass is not greener other than where you water it, you know, from a financial standpoint, from a staying planet standpoint, I think that's when we will regain some of those things. And I'm seeing it from a trainer standpoint. I see a lot of personal moments.
Yeah.
And since I see a lot of personal moments, to me, I'm starting to see it calm down a little bit because now it's, okay, is it about winning? Is it about opportunities? Hey, I've seen enough kids move and it not work out for them. Now people are starting to go, hold on.
Yeah.
Let's sit still.
In one of our conversations the other day, two questions, I'm going to kick it over to Jerry, but one of our conversations the other day, you made a comment about, you know, if you're a hard worker, you're a player, you know, the way that it is now with social media and the way that coaches have so much access, there's not many players that get overlooked. Now, they need some help in making decisions, but they're going to, if you're good enough, you know, they're going to find you. You know, we were talking about that the other day, but would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think that is a gap. It's a gap overall from a evolving standpoint.
I got you.
I think that a lot of us have old school tendencies that are great, and a lot of us have to evolve in a way of utilizing social media to help our athletes with their platforms. And I think that it comes down to a resource standpoint. You still have to be a father. You still have to be a husband. Coach Hood still has to be a father. He still has to be a husband. And I think when we remove the egos and we realize that it takes a village still, I think that we'll be fine.
Yeah. Last question. All right, you're in charge. All right, I talked. You know, you talked a little bit about what you think the problems are for high school football in Alabama. So we're going to put you in charge. You're the brand new executive director at the Alabama High School Athletic Association. You may not. There's any rule, any bylaw that you can put into practice. Okay, what would you do? What's the one change that you would make to say we're going to do this to make to maybe save high school football? What would that be, Coach?
I don't know if it'll be a rule, but I think it'll be something that I would make mandatory for athletes. I think it was a program when I was in high school called like STAR, where you would have to go in there and take like a certain test.
Right.
We can't just keep testing the athletes because at the end of the day, when I'm 16, I can't make certain decisions alone.
Yeah.
So I think I would come in and I would bring some form of education to the parents and have some accountability from the parental standpoint. If you bring accountability from the top, then you can have accountability with the athletes. So I think parents that kids are involved in athletics or people that are in position that are leaders in their household, whether it's an adopted parent, whether it's a foster parent, I think that we have to put in education, and you have to be you have to go through some type of STAR program for your athlete to be able to play high school athletics.
That's
So,
excellent.
yeah.
That's excellent. I've got one more question, but I'm going to kick it over to Jerry, and then I'll have.
Well, you know, I'm very aware of all the great things you do, especially for educating parents, like you said. Now I got kids everywhere. Some work with you.
Yeah.
Some coach in colleges that you come across from
Yeah,
time to
most
time. That's one of the benefits of getting old. And,
Wise.
Well, wise, right, right. But you get a terrible rap in some circles. Terrible rap. Some say you broker kids to other schools, certain schools.
Yeah.
Some say that when an athlete comes to you, they have to sign to be exclusive to you. And I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you that hard question. One, influencing a kid to go to another place would make a third party. You know, and I know you've had contract Birmingham City for a period of time and now Moody for the month that they didn't have a coach, all that kind of thing. So you are the definition of a third party.
No, so I haven't had a contract. I haven't had a contract with them. So I'm a vendor. You know, just like
I understand.
Cisco.
I understand that. It's still the influence that you have. You know, trainers are defined now as third parties. Do you push any kids to certain schools?
No, I never have. I think that when you look at the proof in the pudding, nobody has ever paid attention to Coach L until my athletes started to tell the world about Coach L. If you look at how I started from humble beginnings and not having resources, I didn't have the resources to do marketing. I didn't have the resources to get out here and speak for myself.
Yeah.
Now that my athletes have spoken enough about me and they have the relationships they have with me, I think the unique situation that I have that's a blessing for me is the relationships. So when an athlete move from one school to another, I'm still involved. You know why?
Oh, I get it.
Because Coach L doesn't have to change up on a kid.
Yeah.
If a kid leaves one school and go to another school, I don't have to be mad at him for contributing to wins or losses. I'm worried about what the kid does to produce. My goal is to get you an education. And I don't say free education, because when you get to school, you still got to earn it. Like, what athletes don't realize that I had to go through was, when I signed a scholarship, they didn't tell me here's a guaranteed contract for 4 years. They said each and every day you wake up, you have to earn this scholarship, or it's going to be a guy coming in behind you to take it. It wasn't even a 1 year. Now it's even worse now. It's a semester by semester situation. So I think that what happens is you see athletes come in and they trust me. And it's no other than like an AAU program. When you go look at these AAU programs, a lot of these parents get together and they talk. And what happens is, if you have a 5-star kid at a school and he's the top performer, if he opens up his voice and say, hey, man, come play with me, his voice is way louder than the Coach L's. So what Coach L does is, when I come in, I tell them, I'm like, hey, you have to make the proper decision for you and your kid, and don't be wrong on it, because you have to live with this decision if it works out or if it doesn't.
That's right.
So that's why a lot of times I remove myself from it, and that's why you see a DJ Dale still around me. That's why you see a Willie Miller still around me. These guys, and like Willie Miller's dad coached for over 30 years. This guy played professional ball. But he will still call me to this day and say, hey, you have a voice with my son that other people don't have. Yeah. Can you steward it the right way? This guy has all the knowledge in the world to help guide his own son, but he knows, because I'm 35, my voice may be able to connect in a way that
he's listening to you right now.
I'm not even going to say he's listening, but I have his ear to the point where I can at least advise him and say, hey, don't allow the outside noise to make you make decisions. You still have to look within yourself to make that decision. Right. I don't ever want to make a kid or tell a kid make a decision, and 3 years from now, you're mad at me. So it would never be Coach L's fault. So, and I think to speak to the bad rep, it's only been because, just being honest, I didn't care. And I do a daily devotional, and the more I realized that God was out here doing all these amazing things and Jesus was doing all these amazing things and people still talk negative about him, I didn't care. But then I said, you know what? If God has put me in a place of leadership, I have a responsibility to learn how to speak to the masses and let them hear who I am. So when you hear who I am, it won't quiet the noise. But what it'll do is you'll hear from the horse's mouth what's actually going on.
I disagree with you. I think it will quiet the noise. Here's why. A lot of times in the coaching community, in the trainer community, with kids, our worst mistake is, I heard this, so now I just believe it, and I told you this. And now all of a sudden, we didn't hear there's one kid going here, there's 22 kids going here. And it builds and builds and builds. And nobody ever gets face to face. That's why this is so important, I believe. I hope it's important. We invite anybody on here to share their deal.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? So I'm hearing you talk, and what you're doing is a mission. You are on a mission. Who instilled that in you?
Just being completely honest, I've learned what I've learned from what I didn't have. So I think a lot of times people make excuses and they live their lives saying, oh, I'm this way because didn't nobody do it for me. The biggest thing for me is I looked at where I've been vacant in my life, and I said, let me be the gap filler. So if I'm guilty for anything, I'm a gap filler.
Who's your hero?
If
I know the answer.
I probably had to say, my mom and my wife, because my wife has told me you're more than a football player. Yeah. When I took that helmet off for the last time, I didn't know who I was for 6 years.
Yeah, you got injured.
I was fussed at the TV.
Actually,
I got injured.
You got injured.
So for my wife to tell me you're more than a football player, you're more than a trainer, and I think that's what put me in a unique space as well. I'm your trainer 1 minute. Pastor Mike Jr. told me, hey, you're the shepherd over your facility. And I fought back from it for so long. But what I realized to myself was, he said, man, you need to anoint your staff. And it was so crazy. I said, hey, DJ, Pastor Mike told me I need to anoint my staff. And he was just like, let's do it. And I was afraid because that's something that my grandmother used to do. And I was like, I don't have the power to do that. And he was like, whenever you're a shepherd of a flock, God has put you in that position to be able to help people and guide people. And all I needed was one to say, let's do it. And long as I got 300-pound DJ Dale behind me, it ain't too many other people that's not going to say, hey, I'm inspired to do so as well.
There's not a better kid on earth, man.
Yeah, there's that kid.
All those kids. There's 3 at least that I know of that work with you in the training aspect of that, and they are wonderful kids.
Great kids. Young men.
Granny played a big role in your life.
She did. So Granny, and Granny did. Granny was the one took me to church. I was there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was there for Sunday school, the next Sunday school session, then the 11 o'clock session. Then she fed people after church.
Then y'all eat after?
Yeah, so like we eat after. So literally like Granny, and it's hard for me to talk. It's crazy because when you said it, my watch went off, and Granny's face was the first one to pop up there holding my kids. And I wish she was still around for my kids to know who I knew. You
have an incredible opportunity, and it seems like you realize that, to make a great impression on a lot of people.
Yeah.
And the courage you have to come in here and to answer these questions directly. Nobody's ever asked. They always tell me stuff.
Speculate, yeah.
and sometimes I'll even see you on another sideline from time to time. So I'm like, he needs to come over here and hug me too, or something.
Well, and I'll speak to that real quick. I'm trying to speak to more people now, and I've told Jeff offline before. I said, hey, I haven't had a chance to meet everybody. I'm only one person. So since everybody sees the training aspect, nobody knows that, I got a kid that's battling cancer right now that played at Hoover that I'm going to see at lunchtime. Nobody knows that I got a kid that skipped school, and now I'm talking to him, and I'm taking him to Booker T. Washington School saying, you're 13, take your butt to class. You know what I'm saying? So nobody sees what I'm doing. Those are the moments that I'm not going to broadcast. You know what I'm saying? And since there's so many special moments that go on and they only see the training part, I don't have enough time to build relationships outside of who comes see me in the facility. And I would love to stand on any sideline.
Do you think we are co-workers? Coach Yeager, myself, you, Jeff?
I think that we're pieces to a puzzle that help things work and go around for all of these athletes.
Everybody has a link in the chain kind of thing. Because I think it's awesome that you took time. Obviously, you getting to know all of us now exudes a little comfort in that what I've heard is not really who you were. So you get to hear about us through our kids that we've coached, and the test of time proves out what is real.
Most definitely.
So DJ will tell you something about me, and it's probably going to be similar to what Willie says. It's probably going to be similar to what Brandon says, TJ says, all these kids, right? And that, I think that's what you lean on. You don't worry about all that other.
Well, I think it's a trusted voice. Me and Jeff has been knowing each other for years. When I had Xavier Langford, when nobody knew the kid, and he's at Pelham, and Pelham's not one of these big winning programs. It was actually a team that was a rival of ours at Hueytown. And when I met him and I met his son, we just built a relationship. So when he said, hey, man, I think you need to go talk to him. And then when I told DJ, I said, DJ, he's my director of operations while he's home, playing for Marina football. And I'm like, hey, DJ, I'm going to talk to Coach Hood and Yeager. And he's like, man, we used to go over there with Coach Yeager in the lineman camp. And, and when I talked to him, to hear you guys light up when you guys talked about my kids are my direct connection. Trusted voices are my direct connection to say, hey, is this okay? And honestly, I prayed about it. Because Jeff can tell me something, DJ can tell me something. But if I pray and God tell me, hey, the Holy Spirit hit me and say, hey, go, I'm going to go. Because one thing I've learned is being obedient comes with a blessing and also comes with God saying, hey, I can afford to give you more responsibility because you were obedient in moments when I told you to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he'll bless you through the hard times, no doubt about it.
Most definitely.
One other thing I want to ask you, Coach L, is like today, you got a busy schedule. You got a lot of important people coming in, Coach Cristobal, Coach Golding. You've built relationship with those guys through the years. And so, one of the things you see on media is all these guys coming in, and I think it's really good that when we have a player that's a prospect, and I'll be honest with you, there's some players that if they've got 5 stars, 4 stars beside their name, they're going to see them, and the bottom line is, do they really need a lot of help? And most of them don't. But there's some kids that fall through the cracks on occasion, or there may be somebody that they may not be a power 4 kind of player, and they need our help. So when a coach comes through, when the college coaches come through, anybody that can give our players help, I'm 100% for that. The question I have for you is this. I see a lot of times with the college coaches and stuff. Do you think that the college coaches, rather than bypassing the high school coach and going to whether it's there's some of these recruiting services, you're not the only trainer, in Alabama. There's trainers, stuff like that. But bypassing the high school coach, do you think that they should go through as a supplement? I'm not saying either. I'm not saying or. Yeah. I'm saying and. Mm-hmm. Do you think they should go through the high school coach too?
So, if a coach comes in and see me and interested in a kid, you have to go through the high school coach.
Thank you.
Coach Prime has a good relationship with me because of Cameron Silman Craig, a kid that came to me in 9th grade at Fultondale High School and ended up, due to a family situation of a death, end up going to Texas and building a relationship with Shador Sanders. This kid went to Jackson State with them. This kid went to Colorado. Because of who he told Coach Prime I was to him, bridged the gap.
Yeah.
And Coach Prime called me and was like, hey, you got a receiver over there that I think's pretty good. His uncle played at Florida State, Mason McClure. Yeah. He was like, he gets an offer. And I'm like, hey, tell Coach Box, your director of recruiting, to call Coach Vakakis and tell him this kid has an offer. And Mason's like, Coach, can I post? I said, no, you can't. I said, because it's not official through me. And I'm like, if I'm a message carrier, the comfort that I have is I'm happy that I've done a great job of taking care of kids to the point where coaches can trust me because of the relationship they have with the kids as well too. Yeah. But I'm a firm believer that you go through the coach. Yeah. And when they come into the city, a lot of coaches, the reason why they come in and build relationships with me is because when they were GA, like Kane Womack, when I was at Jacksonville State, he was a GA. Now he's the defensive coordinator at Alabama. Because of the relationship on who I was to him when he wasn't the defensive coordinator is why he wants to stop by and see me. Freddie Roach, who coached DJ Dale for 3 of those years, he's like, hey, DJ used to talk about you so much. Now me and his wife, and my wife's name is Ashley, his wife's name is Ashley. Our 2 baby kids are the same age, and we built a relationship to the point where every morning when we're working out, we're talking about life because he doesn't have a person that he can call and understands that, hey, I love football, but let's talk about something other than football. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You need those relationships. But I'm a firm believer that when you come into the city, you need to come in and see everybody. But it's a reality there that the same way that Coach L may get a bad rep for kids, high school coaches, some of them are not necessarily selling their players. They're selling their next opportunity to become a college coach.
Yeah.
So that's some of the drawback from why some coaches come in and say, hey, Coach L, we trust you because you're going to tell us about the players.
Yeah. This is one thing I want to share with you, and I'm glad you do that. And, Coach, I just want to say thank you for doing that. I want to share you a little bit from the sentiment of high school coaches. And so a couple things. One, to me, and it's different now because you see people, they're bringing in from the transfer portal 30 and 40 players right now. And so, but one of my favorite encounters, exchanges with a college coach, I'm just going to go ahead and say his name is Dabo Sweeney. He came in, he said, he was asking about one of the players. And this player had all the measurables. I mean, he had everything. He was a no miss. So we're all in there talking, and so he pulls me aside. He says, I got one question. He says he checks every box. But he says, this is the most important box. What would life be like for him without football? And that was an incredible question. Well, to me, here's what they do when they bypass the high school coach. The high school coach spends more time with them than anybody. If I hire an assistant coach on my staff, I'm going to talk to as many people as I can that assistant coach has worked for so I can get an accurate view of what this guy's going to do to the culture of the staff. I tell our players, look, if somebody offers you without telling me. Think about what that locker room is going to be like. That is going to be like toxic, because that means everybody else in that locker room, they did the same way. I'm with you more than anybody. If they don't talk to their coach, then that means that they have basically done the same thing. All right, and that's one. So here's the second thing. This happened at Leeds, Alabama. They come in, they offer a player. Okay, that player at Leeds was committed to them forever from the beginning. And then in the 11th hour, they pulled the scholarship. And we know now commitments and offers doesn't mean a whole lot. We had the same thing happen to a player years ago at Mount Brook. It was, and I'll just say the school. Well, I'm not going to say the school. But anyway, they offered this player. And so this player was committed to them for months. The 11th hour, they pulled the commitment. Well, we had alumni in our community. Matter of fact, we had people that contributed to that university, people that contributed to scholarship funds and stuff. Coach, it created such a firestorm. I can't even explain. So there is in these communities, the reason the coach is the connection to the community. Mm-hmm. If they back out or they mistreat or they are not above board in the recruitment of a player, the coach has access to the community, just like I did in that case. And it holds universities, it holds coaches accountable, because they're acting on behalf and in good faith of that university. And when they go outside of that, they don't have anything that's more valuable than their word. If their word doesn't mean anything, then that university, in my opinion, doesn't mean anything. And I will tell you this, not only does your community go crazy, but the second they start contacting the alumni office and people that are connected with that, it changes the whole game to me. So I think that the reason that they need to go through the coach is for a level of accountability. I think it's awesome what you do. But again, Jerry said it best, we're working together. We are partners in all this to try and give players opportunity. And like you said, there's going to come a day when this athletic ability will fade. Mm-hmm. And then just like you're just the best example, what's left then? Like the education that you got from the game of football, the sport of football, is so far superior. And I hate to say this because you guys know where I teach. It surpasses the facts that you put in your brain from math and English and science and history. It's the pinnacle of the education process, and you're the best example of this. I sit there and I think about what you do. You're sitting there and you're developing players. If I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about a player walks into your office and he's an 8th grader or a 9th grader and he's with you 4 or 5 years, you are all about, you just told me you're all about the development of the whole person. Mm-hmm. The transfer, saying, well, let's just short circuit that and go transfer, that just seems so contradictory to that, And so I said all that to say this, is that we're sitting there, we've got a lot of problems in dealing with high school football right now. I think that we've got a small one. I think we're at a crossroads. Jerry and I have talked about this. I've also thought, I've woke up at night leading up to our interview today, and I thought, what if Coach L could be the piece in this thing that helps us fix this whole operation? What if you're the guy? I mean, you've already fixed a high school. And that's your legacy. What if you're the key piece here in all of our conversations? What if it's you?
Yeah, and I think it's always going to be God-led. God probably positions us where we're supposed to be. And I think even from that standpoint, I want to see it more competitive. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to see – it's so funny because me and Freddie was talking and he was like, man, you know why our friendship is good? He said, because you don't just send me all your players. Like Freddie Roach will call and say, hey, L, you got a kid that fell under the radar and nobody knows about. I'm going to call Bush Jones of Arkansas and tell him that this will be a great player for him. Those situations and those relationships where all of us are trying to help people, I definitely know I can be a help from that standpoint. You know what I'm saying? Helping people, help bridge the gap. That's all I am. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, I don't look at my best friends are occupational therapists and physical therapists. You know what I'm saying? None of my best friends coach football. You know what I'm saying? And I think that as we continue to just build relationships and I get in front of cameras and I talk and I tell people about what I do, people can see where Coach L fits and what it is that they're trying to build or what they already have sustained and how we can continue to help it be sustainable. So it's opportunity. It's ways that we can make these things better. It's just a matter of we got to come together. Egos have to be dropped. Egos have to be dropped, and we have to be willing to come together and talk and say, hey, how can we fix this? You know what I'm saying? And I think that when other people drop egos, now it's not about being comfortable. You know, when I walked in here, there was no ego involved. That's how I could be so comfortable. And at the same time, when you have nothing to hide, it's easy for you to get in front of a mic and a camera and talk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if a person is running from a mic, if a person is running from a camera, they got something to hide. That's how I look at it.
You know, going back to the recruiting part of it, over the course of our career, that has really changed. And with NIL and the lack of any kind of structure in college, you know, there's 1,200 kids still stuck in the portal. 600 or more of those their career ended because of a decision they made to enter the portal instead of staying at the school they were. They're getting bad advice.
So I'm a place something in there too. Some of those kids are placed in there because somebody told them to get in.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And not necessarily just an individual from their home, coaches.
No doubt.
You know, coaches, I mean, it doesn't look good for a program to say, hey, we put this kid in the portal because now we damage him from an opportunity to be able to go somewhere else. Yeah. And I think that it's something that I'm learning behind the scenes. And since coaches trust me, I'm hearing this from places that they can't get in the masses and talk. And when these kids get in and transfer and they end up stuck, it's still the education piece.
Yep. Let me ask you. I'm taking it in a different direction. There's all kind of reasons kids get into the portal, and there's an appropriate time to make that decision for your life. I would say it's probably not after your first year. You need to go through that adversity. The first year to the second. Go through the second year. I've got one that transferred from Arkansas to Troy, but he stayed 2 years, even though he wanted to leave the first year. He got wise advice. He stayed. He continued. Now he sees this opportunity as an opportunity to get on field and make. Says, great thing, right? And I know coaches put some kids like, you better get in because you're not going to have a place here. It's a terrible situation because of the lack of rules. But what I wanted to ask you is, have you seen a change in how college coaches recruit? In other words, I've got an average kid that would play college football somewhere. Doesn't matter where to me, but I want you to have that opportunity, have an opportunity for education, and they probably pay for a little bit of your education or all of your education. Have you seen a difference in advising kids, I would say? Like there's a kid that has this level. If he's a 5-star, no worries. He's going to get it paid for. I'm middle of the road. I'm working with you. I'm trying to get better. Is there now a urgency to say you better get a spot?
Yeah, so most of the time I advise my guys to be committed by May before official visits and everything else start. Because if you're committed by May, going into that, and of course I get with the head coaches on that. Sure. If you're committed by May, when you go into the summertime and they're trying to throw all these flashy things in front of your face, it's either they're going to show what they really want, if they really want you, or they're going to show if they really don't. You know what I'm saying? So you're forcing the colleges to show their hands early. I think the biggest thing I've seen in recruiting is it's a pressure from the top. That's what's not getting talked about. If I have a coach,
what's the top, Coach A?
When I say the top, we're talking college football.
Right.
When you look at it, even from the NFL level, coaches are not allotted the amount of time to develop anymore.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And since they're not allotted enough time to develop, you're seeing it go all the way down. If you have a high school coach that comes in and in his first or second year, he's trying to build a solid foundation to build up these kids and win, but the pressure is on him to win. If he doesn't within that second year, he's fired. So now he got to figure out how he's going to feed his family.
Isn't that terrible? It's high school sports now. You talk about your step-by-step training facility, your mission, your goal is all about pouring into kids, helping them be better people. This is our conduit. Athletics, training, this is what we love. We have a passion about. This is why someone like Coach Yeager, someone like myself can bring up all these topics. Because if you fire me, I'm retired all of a sudden. And then I'm going to come down and work it step by step if I love athletics, because that's just what I love. All right, but that's the issue we have in Alabama high school. We don't feel like you got public and private separated now with not enough private schools to really have their own. To me, that's a negative. We need to be together. That's to me.
Yeah, some of it I don't know. Just being under the rules and regulations, I don't know.
But let me tell you something. These to be heard is a big deal. Mm-hmm. But if you're raising a family like you have young kids, young family, and you're a coach, you're in the teaching profession, especially if you're a coach, because you're not treated like an English teacher. You teach English well, good job. Mine's in front of 3,000 or 4,000 people watching us making decisions. And then all these interpersonal relationships and those kind of things with the kids, and you got this opportunity. And like you said, it comes down from the top down. Having the time to prove yourself and to build from within takes two things. One, patience from people that can fire you. And then two, the kids all staying in their community to build this thing up like you did at Hueytown.
And I think that's what's unique, and that's a great question, and I'd love to speak to. I feel like when you fix it at the top, to hold the people accountable, I think that like a rule or something that I would see in Alabama if I was in that position was to have these 4-year contracts for a coach. Mm. Because if I take a kid from when he's 14 years old, you're giving me time to actually properly pour into him. Now, of course, you'll have different stipulations in it like you would any contract, and if you breach it, then, of course, change and pivot. But if you give a guy 4 years to sell who he is, build his program, you'll see it fixed. But the city of Birmingham is working on something right now, and I'm partnering with them with the youth parks on just allowing them to have kids. A lot of these kids can't afford training. So people don't understand how many kids come in that are underprivileged who are paying $10, $15 just to come in for a training session where, honestly, I'm not really making a whole lot. I'm taking care of my family. We're good. But I'm not making millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. When you look at it, you go, okay, we can fix it at the top and have some accountability there to have some sustainability within a kid. Because I think sometimes that's the issue as well. When kids come in and they talk about transferring, and I look at them like, why? Well, I don't know if this coach going to be here this long. I'm like, that should be a guarantee.
Good point.
That should be a guarantee when I'm 14
how
years
terrible
old.
is that?
That's terrible.
But then also you see kids say they want to transfer because they go, well, college coaches ain't coming by my school. So when you see me pop up on the sideline, just being honest, if a program who hasn't won in 20 years see a trusted face there, he's going to go by. I've taken Freddie Roach to 6 different high schools, and because of literally, me and him was like, hey, I'll take you to lunch and get you a steak dinner if you go by this school. He meets Jeremiah Beeman at Parker High School. Right. And he's like, man, Parker don't win. I ain't going by there.
Well,
this years ago.
Here's another great one. KJ Johnson Woodlawn.
KJ. But guess what Clarence Williams does? Clarence Williams, he literally reaches out to every college coach he can.
Yes, he does.
And he'll go, hey, L, because you're a great guy, I'm going to tell them to come stop by and see you because of what you do. And then vice versa. Yep. He go, hey, L, do you know anybody at this school? And then I go, hey, get in the truck with me. Yep. And because they trust me, we're going to lunch. They're going to stop by and go to lunch. One of these coaches is going to stop by and go to lunch, and I'm going to go, hey, let's go by Woodlawn. Yep. Woodlawn. And then Clarence is able to tell them about the early enrollment these guys are doing in college. And he's like, L, I just met 2 kids that got a 4.3 GPA that signed to Alabama A&M that literally educationally he got in the door with the 4.3, but because of the relationship Freddie has with DeMarco Coleman and the relationship I have with Sam Shade, he's like, hey, we should go by there and see this guy. Yeah. So what happens is it's kind of like everybody's really trying to help the kids, and when you get enough good guys in the right situations and you have some sustainability to the coaching staff, you're able to keep these relationships and help these kids realize that, hey, when I'm in the 6th grade, by the time I get to the 9th grade, it's not going to be a coaching change. I'm at least be able to have the guy to and I think that's how we fix that issue, by being able to guarantee coaches a solidified spot where they're not just willingly accepting guys to come in and they're saying, hey, you know what? I can build up the guys that I got because I'm going to have time to prove myself. That's the competitive. As a high school head coach, you want to prove that you can go beat people and that you can win off of what you build. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I think that a lot of these guys are accepting the transfers and things like that because they're saying, oh, my God, I need to be able to sustain my job to feed my family. Yeah.
So you think this is coming out of fear for a job? I got to keep my job. I have a family.
At the end of the day, the only thing that can fear any man that has God behind him The only thing to make him question that is if he can properly provide. All three of us are sitting inside. If you threaten the way that we can provide for our families, we're going to be nervous.
Yeah. And and it's really, to me, it's the greatest challenge. Like, everybody comes into this sport, I feel like, or most people do. I can't say everybody, but most coaches come into this sport because they want to change lives. They want to alter the trajectory of young men that trust us enough to walk through our front door. But the second, that it says, look, you're not going to be able to do that unless, like, we always talk about process. And then all of a sudden somebody starts saying, well, all we care about is the outcome. And now do we compromise the process of developing a young man that we believe in, that's that's what it does.
At the most critical time of
the most critical time.
If I'm with Coach Yeager from 9th grade, if I'm with Coach Hood from 9th grade to 10th grade, and you take a guy who's built me up to believe in myself and remove him from me, you've literally took a part of me.
Wow.
So I think that fear from the top, I think that accountability needs to be there, and I think that more conversations need to be had of what can we do to get better instead of what's going on over there.
Right.
And I think this conversation right here helps move that in a positive direction to say, hey, we probably shouldn't fear trainers. We probably should look at it. And I can't speak for every trainer. All I can speak for is Coach L. I know that I'm able to stand in certain gaps because of my life experiences that other trainers may not be. And just like you guys hear stuff, I've seen stuff that I understand why you look at a Coach L and go, I've seen stuff from certain trainers. Yeah. Just like you guys have seen stuff from some coaches and you go,
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that when you see it, it makes you pull yourself back. And at the end of the day, it's all fear. But if we're trying to do what's best for athletes, we got to come together.
Yeah, true.
If you're a head coach at Mountain Brook, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to talk to a coach from another school. There's no reason why it should be any issues, because even if we have issues, God tells us that we're supposed to be able to use logic and work together to get through it. You know what I'm saying? And I know. If we keep God in the center of it, that's how we truly fix it. Yeah. And I think that in order for you to see how to properly move, God talks about leadership in the Bible. And if you look from a leadership standpoint, he's given us the blueprint on how leadership is ran. Mm-hmm. I got to be humble enough to say, hey, you don't have time, make time.
Yeah.
Hey, you don't care what people think about you, care in this way because it affects kids. Yeah. Because if I have anybody speaking negatively, if you think about it, if somebody speaks negatively on Coach L and that kid loves me, he's automatically against you. Mm. Because nobody knows when, a Khalifa Keith is in the 9th grade and certain situations came up and he lost his mom and his dad.
I know.
And certain things needed to be done to help make sure that they.
It's layers. It's layers of people, layers of men. Standing in the gap. One may not be. I may not be enough. I may need another guy to help. My assistant coaches, the teachers, the administrators, and then people, that can stand in the gap.
You still gotta be a dad. We have so many roles and responsibilities and hats that we wear in our personal lives to the point where I'm needed. Mm. Because I'm going to speak the same thing to my kids that you're speaking about, being disciplined, holding themselves accountable, doing what's right when nobody's looking. Those are the things that kids are going to remember. When I sit down and I'm retired one day, hopefully sitting on the front porch looking at the water, that's what comes me. I hope that kids will say the same thing my daughter said to me 2 weeks ago. She said, Daddy, I want to do what you do. And I said, what's that? You want to train? She said, no, I just want to help people. And that's when I realized to myself that if my 8-year-old can hear conversations when she's in the truck, can see what her dad does on a day in and day out basis, my boys, I just want them to understand that we have to come together and help people. And it doesn't matter what we look like, how we talk, what background you came from. It's certain things that you experienced at Mountain Brook. I've never went to Mountain Brook to go to school. I need to know what it's like. When Cole Gabe was able to come over there to that facility, and because Cole carries himself neat, and not cursing and things like that, I got a kid that his environment has saw something totally different, totally opposite. Now these guys are hanging together. Now Cole has a certain grit that he wouldn't have had if he didn't come from East Lake Park playing football. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? There's different elements and different layers to it that when we come together, that's why you see step-by-step thriving. Step-by-step thriving is because it's about unity. But if I yell unity and all that, somebody's not going to want to see unity. And if they don't want to see unity, those are the bad apples we have to remove. But that unity piece of seeing kids that come from different economic backgrounds come together and work together. When it comes to football, nobody cares about how much money you got in your pocket when you're running that peel.
That's true.
They probably figure out what we figure out as coaches. One of the reasons you love sports, not just football, but all sports. You got different economic backgrounds in your group. You got different races in your group. You got different talent levels in your group. When you're working, you realize we're not any different.
And the more we realize that we come from the same person, the more we realize that it's one God, we'll all be fine. And I think that a lot of these times we have these conversations, and when I hear these conversations, nobody's talking about God. And when you start to give credit to who it's due to, he'll make everything else fall in line and fall in position how it's supposed to.
The test of time, the test of time will be your true testimony. Like your daughter figuring that out at 8 years old. You talked about your son's great interest in robotics, all these kind of things. You have to wear different hats. You will not understand other people. Because I ask you a tough question, because it's a question you know everybody's saying.
Yeah.
You got high school staffs wanting to come build relationships with you. You got recruiters coming to build relationships with you. And, you know, instead of that kind of situation or a cold whatever conversation, you know, we wanted to have a place where you say, well, let's just ask him.
I think the cool thing about it, too, is, and I think why the high school coaches respect me, is because I tell them straight up, I'm not giving a kid to you. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing at your program, your kids are going to talk about your program. And the reason how I know how this works is because I've built step by step. When I had an athlete that's now 13 years old, that was 3, that I would pick up in a car seat from his parents' house and take to dribble a basketball over in Hoover when I didn't have a facility. So when I've looked at it, God has allowed me insight and hindsight now to see how I built my program to say, hey, when you do what you're supposed to do, the kids will speak for you. When you do what you're supposed to do, kids will want to stay there. When you go to the youth parks and go to the football games, you'll be fine in sustaining your program. But if you're only focused on the stars, if you only focus on if you're treating the stars different than you're treating the guy that's not a star, the guy that's not a star going to be the guy to come back to that program and help that program win 20 years from now more than the 5-star is.
You know, the best thing I like is when I need one from a recruiting standpoint, 4 kids. We're using this as an avenue. I love when I have 1 or 2 that all the coaches in the country are going to be interested in.
Because it helps opportunity for everybody else.
I can sell these other kids and say, look, Huntington can do this amount of money for your education. Then I say to the parents, and it took me a couple of years at least, they were like, well, Huntington, oh, Faulkner, oh, Alabama State. Oh, I'm like, guys, I am a parent of 4 kids. If somebody pay half for them, I'm all in. And it's an opportunity. And today's landscape of how all the, you know, power 4s are taking a lot of transfer portal. You got this mixture, transfer portal, fill needs, and we're going to take 10 to 15 high school kids. All right? That pushes all that down. Get your place in line and go. I love to have a great one. That's why I love to hear you talk about those that may be like me, average athlete. You're going to work with me too. That I'm enjoying hearing about that because I love to sell all of my other kids that maybe God didn't bless them with 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". They're 6'1.5", but they're a great lineman. If they get in line, you may have an opportunity in today's world to really move up.
I got 2 kids. Jason Jones played at Calera. I think he was the highest ranking guy I've ever just got when he was in 10th grade. He was a kid that ended up with me not because he was a 4 or 5-star, because he was 396 pounds. And I worked with him and called his mother on FaceTime. She emptied out her refrigerator, and literally he met with a Hall of Fame safety. I can't even think his name right now. He played with the Ravens, Ed Reed, at the Under Armour All-American game. And he said, if you lose this weight, you'll be great. Kid was 200. I'm sorry. Yeah, he was 396 pounds. We cut him down, and on signing day, Jeff was there signed at 319 pounds 6 months later.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not because of any supplements, because he changed what he ate. He worked out for 2 hours a day. We ran. We put in proper things like that. But then you look at it and you say, okay, how did he make it? Not because of the stars, because of the work. You look at Cameron Sealman Craig, that's an undersized defensive back that played on the practice squad, did not get drafted, and sat there and put in work, and now he got re-signed to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You look at DJ Dale, who was a 4-star, who went into Alabama, started for 4 years, still went undrafted, worked out for 2 years, didn't have an opportunity, but stayed with the work and made it. It's too many stories around me that the collective thing about it was, all you got to do is put your head down and work.
DJ's one of those I'm talking about. DJ was a certain height and had certain hand size and wingspan. And this is a true story. Coach Saban tells the staff, too short. And he would say things like, would you recruit me? Speaking of himself, I got it. I'm telling, I think back then it was either Cristobal or Billy Napier that had our area. I told him he was in the 9th grade. I said, that kid, I'm telling you, there's something different about that kid. Because we brought DJ up when he was an 8th grader and let him practice with us in the spring. And later on, I'll tell you a funny story about that. That's how I got to know his mom and his stepdad really closely. That didn't go so well for DJ. He kind of fell out because he wasn't in good shape. But we saw this kid has something unbelievably special. I started telling folks about him in the 9th grade. You better eyeball this one. You better eyeball this one. Well, all the world just goes around, and it all comes back around, and they see his play on the field, and Coach Saban says, that's a winner right there. And then he did great things at Alabama. He's doing great things now. He was smart enough to marry a woman way smarter than him.
Get ready to go to dental school.
And let me tell you something. He married up. What a great job.
I think all of us did.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I'm going to tell you, I appreciate you coming in here.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Because I don't think we get anywhere going back and forth on X, social media, talking about each other, all this kind of stuff. We'd never get anywhere. When you get nose to nose with a human, then you can make your own judgment. And like I said, the test of time always proves
who a person
the
is.
truth.
Yeah.
It always does.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate your courage. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what you stand for. I read your story about your dad and your granny.
Yeah.
Granny, the reason I am attracted to that story, one of the places you mentioned was Eastlake. And so, that's where I grew up. So whatever about my life, okay, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was what it was. I grew up. I'm an okay football player at Huffman. I think I'm okay. End up going to Alabama State because they paid for a full scholarship, and my mama couldn't afford a full scholarship. She couldn't afford to send me to school. So I go there, and the one thing I learned most of all, I walk on that campus, and I'm one of 3 white kids on the team. And in about 4 minutes, I realized there ain't no difference. There ain't no difference. We're all right here. Because if I can earn respect on this field, it's there forever, no matter what. And these guys are my lifelong friends today.
Never knew you even played at Alabama State, and I think that's something great for people to hear.
Yeah.
What
I appreciate is you have a hard story. A lot of the kids you work with are going to have a hard story. We got thousands of hard stories, and it don't matter where you live, by the way. We have thousands of hard stories that we're involved with daily. And I will tell you this. If you don't allow yourself to be a victim, you can overcome anything.
Yeah, most definitely.
Consider it all joy when you encounter various trials.
That's right.
I appreciate y'all for having me.
Man, thanks for coming. Yeah. I know you got to go. I hear your thing going off.
Yeah, Coach Golden called.
You've given us a lot more time than we had planned, but it was golden, Coach L. It really was.
Appreciate you coming. Appreciate y'all having me.
We thank his agent too, Jeff Allison over there. Is that your agent?
He set it up. Jeff
Well,
Allison's
it's so
the guy.
crazy because he's, like I said, trusted. You know what I'm saying? When you trust people, it's easy to bridge this gap. And I think with the trust that we have, he's like, "L, you got to talk to him." He's like, everybody's got a misconception. And he's been fighting for me for years to tell everybody who I am. But it's hard for you to tell somebody who they are until you meet the actual person.
Yeah.
And I think with me being here, this allows for an audience that you guys have that I don't have. To meet me and know who I am.
They can make up their own mind now.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
They have substance to make up their mind, the right substance.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So, yep.
Well, thank you, Coach L. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate y'all for having me.
All right. What a conversation with Coach L. We want to thank him for his time, and pretty cool that Coach Pete Golding had basically called into studio. I'm sure he wanted to converse with us, but they're meeting now, and we get to break down our conversation. Jerry, that was extremely insightful. Lots of great questions from you and Chris, and I think he said a lot of good things that we can all learn from.
Well, the thing I wonder when he said it was Coach Golding on the phone is would Dabo be there as well? Because that could be like a WWE match. That'd be fantastic to watch, wouldn't it? Boy, for years, like in our profession, a lot of times people will have, and I've had people say this to me, especially when we're winning big and doing some things earlier in my career. They had an impression of me because of what they heard. Mm-hmm. And then they, after we talk or whatever, which I think pretty easy to talk to and pretty approachable and all that kind of thing, they go, nothing like I'd heard you or a little bit thing. So we would always hear about Coach L sending kids here, Coach L sending kids there, mm-hmm. Coach L. And this man, we finally decided we just need to ask him. We need to have a conversation. Yep. He's a human being. Let's just have a conversation. Let's see where it goes. And time will tell on all of our lives, how we are. But he sat right here. He answered every question. He put forth his mission that step-by-step training is doing. I think I applaud him for spending time today. I think Jeff kind of put him in touch with us.
He was a catalyst for it.
When we made the open announcement that anybody can come on this show. We're not looking for all people that agree with us. Come on this show. And we've had some turn us down that were very bold publicly. Oh, yeah, I'm going to come on. I'm going to come on. And then it's like, whoa, let me hit the brakes. So, you got to give him credit for that. But I thought a very enlightening interview. And now, I'll be honest with you, I feel like any of us three can now pick up the phone and say, hey, let me tell you about my kid. Or are you working with my kid? Or has anybody reached out about the kid that's been training with you? I think we got an avenue, and we've built a bridge here. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is all about the kid, the player that he cares about. And, as a parent, and I'm on the basketball side when my kids come up, that's what we look at is we want the best for our kids. We want them properly trained, and we want them at the best place. My place was Pelham. I felt like we could have, my kids, I'm not, they were Division I player, Division II player, could have gone different places in the state to play in high school, but we wanted to make Pelham our community.
I did think that his passion for Hueytown came through.
Yeah. One thing that he did talk about that was insightful to me, and I have heard this, and he sort of confirmed it. Y'all help me to make sure that I did hear this right, but he was talking about sometimes players, they come into his facility, and he was talking about he does not direct those players to a school, but he did say this. He said sometimes there could be a 4 or 5 star that said, hey, let's go here, and they follow him. Now, we've talked about that, and we said, whether that's a 7-on-7 in any of these things where the players get together, there could be one that says, that I'm going to the school. It could be him doing it just by himself. It might could even be a coach from that school recruiting him, whatever. But usually, he says some of those things begin. He said some of those super teams or an AAU team. He said they begin by it's player driven sometimes, which we've known that, and the question's always been, is a player a third party? When that happens, what about when that happens? But the thing that I think that was good is what he said about, look, just because you're facing adversity where you are, which he did, just because you're facing adversity, that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It can be the best thing. I think that all of us can sit here and say we've all faced adversity, and that's truly has been a gift, the way that you handle it and come through it. But I do like what he said about that as far as if that happens and if he is approached, this is what I say.
I thought it was insightful too, or revealing, that he kind of self-admitted that one of his mistakes was he remained quiet when, some of these things would go. And now he has the confidence to say, let's talk about why. Is this the best avenue for you? Because that's who
you're talking about. Talking to the player,
parents or anybody. Whether if a parent, he said, if a parent comes and says we're going to transfer to this school, he said initially he would remain quiet.
Yeah,
and I think you saw some of that today, just reading his body language. If you look at him today, I think there certainly had to be a little bit of, okay, we're going to do this. And you could see that his confidence in his answers, he was disarmed. In other words, there was no like, why are you asking me this question? Because I asked him a hard question because I've heard it for years, and the easy thing for me is to assume that if I hear something about Jeff Allison for 3 or 4 years, man, I don't want that dude talking to me because I've heard this from everybody.
Right.
And so my deal was, the thing I wanted most is it's going to be a hard question. And do you funnel players out to certain schools or any schools?
And you asked him beforehand, is there anything off limits?
Is there anything? I gave him, I
sure
said, is there anything off limits?
We did.
And he quickly answered no.
Yeah. But true. I wasn't concerned that wasn't why I was asking him. I read the article that AL.com did on him in January of 2025, I believe, and his story was a story of overcoming the obstacle and his relationship with his family and his faith and how he finally got over being angry. Well, that article, if I printed that article, I could say, if you erase the name, I've had hundreds of kids in those situations. I get it. Okay? Now you try to find your passion, And what I like most of all is that even though he had challenges, like we were talking about, he stayed at Hueytown. That was, by the way, in your next career, you really have an arc. But you were telling that story as if it happened last year, or we just studied it on Huddle the other night. I was like, I don't even remember that. That was 2001. I was alive then. So, the incredible job there. But you got to give him credit for coming on. Those that have been pissed off for years are still going to be pissed off. But I don't think you accomplish anything in life unless you go nose to nose and say, is this true?
Right.
Yeah.
And he has so many relationships, and I think that's where people assume, because he has relationships with a lot of high school coaches in the Birmingham area, that he gets a bad rap on because he can pick up a phone and call so-and-so, and they'll answer the phone.
Sure.
And where maybe if he calls somebody outside Birmingham, he might not have that quick access.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people just think that he's in Birmingham, he's got the influence on the kids, the parents, and he can maneuver kids. And he's, as you can tell, he is not into that.
It is true. Here's fact. Here is a fact. Because when you're going to have somebody on, I asked several people, tell me about Coach L. And I'd just say that, and I'd let them roll. And I had one guy tell me, he said, I hear a lot of things about Coach L too, but I'll tell you, the education piece he does with the parents, especially in Birmingham, has really been eye-opening and beneficial. And as far as what is a scholarship? How do you get a scholarship? What steps do you have to go through the NCAA, even bringing coaches in, financial aid counselors in? That was my understanding of it. He does that. He puts on that presentation, and that is a good thing.
Right.
And I know it's led to some other stuff, but, that's none of our, that thing has just grown from nothing to something.
Yeah.
And I was glad we had him in. We had a chance to ask him anything we want. He never said, "Don't ask me any hard question." And we even gave him this option with our great superstar, world famous producer William Galloway. William said to him, "If there's anything you won't cut out, we will cut it out.
Yeah.
If you misspeak or whatever." And man, what you're going to see is just open. Yeah. Just like it's supposed to be. I salute him.
And Chris, I know he had Cole, your running back.
Yeah, he's had two of our running backs.
Right. And
Stuart
so
Andrews as well.
Do you feel like that's been a benefit from him going, training with Coach L to help the program, or do you feel like, it was just another piece of their development? Do you feel like, it was something that benefited Mountain Brook because of the time he put into it as a trainer? I mean, do you see the importance of trainers nowadays?
The thing that he did that I thought was good, and this is what separates trainers, and I wish I'd have brought this up when he was in here. I can tell you how it went for two of my players, and we've had more than that, but I was closer involved with these two. But number one, that they loved him. The thing that he would do too is he would come out to our place sometimes and work them out, but he would ask the questions, what have y'all done this week so far? What are y'all doing? And we've had trainers before, if we've had a heavy squat day, well, they're just going to go ahead and squat them again because they've got a canned workout. But he sort of tailor-made it for the kid that wants to do extra to fill in the gaps, which to me, I'm a 100% for that. Any trainer that approaches it that way, we've had the same thing like some of these quarterback trainers. They could care less what you're teaching, and that's what separates them. When they come and they ask you, what have you done? What's your philosophy? What do you believe in? Now, that's how he handled it. And I can say, I was good with that. I will say this too. I had a player one time, and I said, is there ever any conversation about transfers at his facility? And he said, oh, yeah. But he said, it's not Coach L. He said what it is. It was exactly what he said. It's exactly – we've talked about this before on the podcast. It was players saying, I'm going over here. Now, I asked Coach L this, and I believe this. What if he could be a part of the solution? And to me, if his stance gets out there, look, I faced adversity. I stayed where I was. I changed that. It was an opportunity for me to emerge as a leader. Coach Hood got to share a little bit about the same situation that he came out of. I could say the same thing. When I was in high school, I was on a team that was 0-10, 3-7, 2-8. That was my high school career. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me because it gave me an opportunity to be in an environment where I could lead. We've all come out of, Jeff, probably you as well, we've all got a story of adversity. But to me, in this environment, the environment in his facility, if it emerges that Coach L, his philosophy is, look, if you're at a place and it's not good, change it, And I think that could be
change the place.
Change the place.
Yeah, don't change it by
don't change your address.
Yeah.
Change the place. Make it.
Yeah,
because
right.
To me, that's where we grow, which is what he said, and I think that gives me great hope if that could be the conversation that comes out. Now, the problem we still have is there are coaches that they want to build the roster,
right?
And we're still going to deal with that.
Yep.
But the non-compliant transfer, whatever that looks like. But he's got a big voice. He has a very, very big voice,
Yeah.
Talked to Danny Horn yesterday for about an hour. We're now in the region with Danny Horn, winningest coach in the state of Alabama.
Wow.
And, of course, wait
a minute. So we've got Danny Horn and Jerry Hood in the same region. This is like we're half of the Mount Rushmore already done. So keep going.
William, we need to edit that out. That is insane.
We got football Mount Rushmore.
We got
two
a
of
new
them.
title for the podcast. It's not guest coach L. It's Mount Rushmore, Jerry Hood, and who else?
Well, I came in here willingly on my own volition. Now I feel like I've been attacked.
You've been hijacked.
I'm going to call Coach L and tell him I know how you feel about all these jokers talking about you.
You're in our studio now, Jerry.
That's right.
Look,
You're
here,
in Mountain Brook now.
Look,
Coach.
this is Chris Yeager. Can I tell you, this guy has a national championship. I mean, he's the greatest offensive line coach ever born. I mean, let's not get into that. Okay?
We're all gonna tear each other down next week. That's what we're gonna do.
That's good stuff. But anyway, I was talking to Danny, and Danny, Coach Horn had a very good article, and put it very plainly that there's certain coaches that they're stepping over the line. They're violating our brotherhood. I would say that's the sad part about it. And we got to discussing Proposal 19 that passed, and technically it has been implemented.
I know.
And I said to him, I believe Leeds is going to write a proposal to clarify so that a student will be identified as his home school or a T as this is his transfer school, beginning the 7th grade, which is athletic eligibility beginning. I think it just needs to be clarified because Mr. Harmon is following that proposal that's now a bylaw of the Alabama High School Athletic Association in that we do have to report transfers. I think we want it to go further. I think if we took a poll of every coach in every sport in high school sports in Alabama, I believe we would get maybe 4 or 5 people that would say, no, don't put that on there. But then that would open the door to see what is the picture. Now we can make adjustments. The way it stands right now, it's cooled off a little bit. And I think Coach L mentioned that. He's seen it cool off a little bit. And I know it has cooled off a little bit. The more it's exposed, the more problems people may have. So hopefully that's forthcoming, and we can get back on that end. That's an accomplishable goal.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do right now. So another thing, don't forget, Friday, end of proposal presentation, and then voting goes through February.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a bylaw, and I'm tying that in all the way back to this. The reason we got off of that topic was because of the Choose Act.
Yep.
The reason the Choose Act filed the injunction or the motion for an injunction was because AHSAA considered financial aid, and the penalty of that that you would be ineligible for 1 year. Well, that is a bylaw. So we can propose bylaws that can be voted on by the members in January. In February, those will be tallied, and then it becomes a bylaw.
Yeah.
And so for him to say, all right, well, I'm just going to overrule the bylaw, well, think of the consequences he would suffer. So you can overrule that bylaw. In my case, you need to overrule anything that would harm me.
And let me ask you this. When was the last time the state ever overruled a bylaw?
Well, overruled a bylaw?
Well, officially
Probably a long time.
Right.
Now, you don't want to get into a whole nother podcast. Follow the bylaws, enforce the bylaws.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll get into that.
I've got a question. So the thing, Jerry's talking about, putting is it a homeschool or did he come from another school, 7th grade or later? And one of the reasons we're talking about doing that, Jeff, is just to bring to the public eye and awareness. Look, some of these teams that you're watching on Friday night, it's really not it's not representative of your community. How aware do you think that the public is of the problem that we're having in high school athletics as far as this?
Do you think it's a problem?
Yeah, that's a great, even better
Well,
question.
I mean, not being a coach, I think people do see the transfers because of social media. And nowadays, I mean, you see players, hey, I'm not going to be at this school anymore. I'm going to be at this school. Mm-hmm. So they're tagging me on things like that. So, I mean, I do think it's just fairness of a community. My thing as a parent, I would think would be hard to deal with is, let's say that I had a receiver and he's been with the school since 3rd grade. And then now we bring in a senior that's in my position, my son's position. How are these, what do these parents think about this? Here we're trying to be a community school, and now my son's on the bench because the head coach brought in a 3, 4, 5-star player to take my place. How does that affect the locker room? How does that affect the community? How does that affect, your team?
Great point. And that could, that's reality because you've got a son that plays basketball. Right. It could happen in any sport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, to me, basketball, you got 5 kids that play, and they bring in, one kid, and
that's right, 1/5 of the team.
Yeah.
When that happens, let's just say that happened to your son. When that happens, your son just received an education. The education is not really what we condone. The education is not that, look, if you work hard enough, long enough, eventually something's going to happen.
Right.
You get better every single day. Whatever happens, you're going to walk away from this sport with something good that happens on the inside. But what that says is this. But at the end of the day, it's not about your process. It's not about getting better. It's about outcome, and it just really sends an educational message to me in that case of something that's not fair,
Right.
not ethical to me.
One of the things
ends justifies the means, I guess.
Right.
There's certain folks have this opinion. Well, we're showing them what it's like in the real world, or I'm going to get mine.
Right.
That kind of thing. Well, the problem with that is in high school is that these kids are developing, and in this time of their development, socially, emotionally, mentally, even biologically, the brain isn't totally formed. The impressions that early on I'm going to get mine and go outside of my community school for athletic benefit or whatever we're relating it to is very dangerous, because more times than not there's going to be some will have great results, some will have average results, but they will carry that we did whatever we had to do on our team to win the big game. It didn't matter, rules be damned. We're going to do what we need to do. Well, what are you telling that group? And then, like to your point, what are you telling the group that you came into? You're the visitor, and all of a sudden we have a bunch of other kids come in, all right, and this kid does not get to participate like he maybe would have a chance to with the kids he grew up with. That's a very dangerous thing to play with, in my opinion. Now, it's the real world. I'm going to get mine, whatever. A lot of times it shows you're going to be very successful. We've talked about that. You may even get the big prize. You may be enhanced financially as a coach. You may move on up in the world. But we're talking about in this part of their life. I don't understand how you could do that and then talk about sacrifice for a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got problems there. So that's what we're interested in. So tying that all back, and you said let the public know. Well, why would the public care? And that's my exact question. Why would they care? Just put that simple little thing on there, because here's why.
Or do they care?
Well, I think they do.
Well, let me tell you something. If they don't, it will at least show the data as to where the stacks are,
Yeah.
the clusters are, and then we go to step 2,
Yeah.
which is, wonder why.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is when you look at it, you go, look, that's a great accomplishment. Like even if you're bringing players, you go, you beat all the competition, but you know what? You just didn't do it with your communities. The best of what your community offers, which is your children. You didn't do it with yours. You had to bring in people that was developed in other communities. You brought them in.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what you would never get. You'd never get a Coach L high school story.
Wow.
You right?
I agree. It's a great point.
Because they struggle.
0-24.
And then he gets to be a part of it. I'm sure Coach L's not the only hero of the Hueytown Golden Gophers in 2001 too.
Well, Jameis Winston was on that
Yeah,
side.
and you know, back in those days too, if you remember, if you went to Hueytown's football field, if you kicked the ball too hard, it might hit Granny's house across the street. You remember those?
Oh, yeah. You went for 2 every time. You never kicked the ball.
You know, not on that end.
Not on that end. You did
You're
not.
not gonna
And
kick
one
the
went
ball.
into the street. Remember?
Right.
One went in the street, and one went in the woods. And,
in the kudzu.
Yeah, and so that's, but the pride that Hueytown people had when you went there to play.
Yeah.
See, that in the development of a child, the winning and losing, we all love to win, and we all love to win, right? It's not the biggest thing in that child's development. When I get to college, when I get to the NFL, well, that's my job.
Yeah.
I better win and lose. But what if you did your job great, but you were a terrible human? Which one wins in the end?
Yeah.
What makes for a better life?
What do you take with you?
Yeah. So all these
You
kind
said
of
something,
things.
Jeff. You were going to talk about you think the community, it does matter to the community. Go. Why?
I just think that people are interested to know that if a player was at school A and now they're playing at B, I think they just look at the whole picture of seeing kids that they might know of. Hey, you know, I was a fan at my kids went to Gardendale, and now they might be at, you know, Hoover or whatever. So I'm just saying, I think they're interested.
just kind of keeping up.
Keeping
with
up,
them.
yeah, pretty much.
Like we grew up and played baseball or football with this kid in Little League.
Exactly.
Now he's over at Hoover. I just
Right.
like to keep up with him.
Exactly.
Yeah, that could be a
Yeah, that's a
thing
good
too.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Yeah.
What a day, huh?
Wow.
We've
Man.
been through it like we were going to have the greatest ice storm in history, and of course, it's a beautiful, just cold day.
Yeah, everybody around our state got it.
Oh,
They
everybody.
did, and
It went around Alabama.
Yeah, it did. God loves Alabama.
That's right.
and so we went. So we went through that. It's still cold outside, but we got a chance to talk to 2 people. We understand each other better. I would call that a pretty good day.
Yeah, really good day, guys. Really, really good
Thank
day.
you.
Jeff, thank you for setting it up, man. You were the catalyst. You know, like
Hey.
I appreciate this. I appreciate that, number one, that you've developed a relationship with Coach L enough to just go past the rumors and past what everybody says. That's one. But the other thing I appreciate is this. I appreciate you trusting Jerry and myself enough to reach out to us and knowing, you know, there wasn't going to be any kind of ambush and it would be legit. I told you up front, you know, and you did too. Like, you're the first one that said, you know, the rumors are out there that he's the broker of
Oh, yeah.
talent. You said that. You know?
Coaches come to me and say that, and I'm just like, look, you don't know the man. You know what I'm saying? When you get to know somebody and know what his heart is, like I've known over the years what he started, it's all about the kids, and he will. I mean, it shows. I mean, these kids pour into him.
Yeah.
It's not about the money per se. It's about helping kids get to the whatever level, either at high school, being the best high school player or the best college player. It really is about the kids.
People will ask sometimes about people I've coached with, and I don't like them or whatever, and I can say, well, listen, all I can tell you is my experience with them.
Right.
You know, and that's all we have. And like Jerry said, you know, I really do believe this. Time will tell.
Yep.
You know, and everybody else.
on all of us.
Yeah.
Yep, on all of us, exactly.
Man, you've been great for high school sports over all these years.
I've enjoyed it.
And you deeply connected to high school sports. I remember when your sons came through Pelham, and you were always just super gracious to me, even when I was a very young coach and just just had hair.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it, Jerry.
Good to be here, guys.
All right, closing us out, we appreciate Jeff. We appreciate Coach L. Chris and Jerry will be back. Again, want to remind everybody listening, this is an open podcast. You have an open invitation to join. Reach out to Jerry, reach out to Chris, reach out to myself. We're accessible via our school emails or social media. You can find us there. Until next time, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.